Many women over 50 want to lose weight, and most have heard of GLP-1 drugs like Ozempic, Wegovy, and Mounjaro. Perhaps some of you have considered taking them or are taking them now. But how much do you really know about these drugs and what they will do to your body? In this episode, we will take a deep dive into what these drugs are, how they work, and our own opinions on taking them. And we'll also share what you can do to naturally mimic the effects of GLP-1 drugs.
Welcome to the Jesus People Sisterhood podcast, a place where Christian single women age 50 plus connect. I am your host, Janine Jordan, a Christian confidence coach and leadership mentor in Alberta, Canada.
And I'm your co-host, Ellie McCormick, a Christian longevity coach and mentor in the USA. Being single women over 50, we know what it's like to feel overlooked, to have unrealized dreams, to experience the challenges of singlehood, and to be concerned about what our future will look like. We couldn't find anything online for single Christian women over 50, so we created Jesus People Sisterhood just for you, a place where sisters encourage and empower one another through the last third of life, because you are a treasure trove of wisdom and of exceedingly great value. This is an authentic community, a supportive family, with other women on the same journey where Jesus is the center of it all. Here you will find real talk, real community, and real sisters.
Join us as we discuss building relationships, whole health, and growing spiritually. We'll review helpful books and articles, chat with guest speakers, share success stories, and have some laughs along the way. So grab your favorite beverage and we'll get started.
Welcome, sisters, to this episode of the Jesus People Sisterhood podcast, the only podcast specifically for single Christian women over 50. Today, we give a shout out to our sisters in Utah. Thank you for listening.
It's a blessing to provide this podcast for free, but it does cost us to produce Jesus People Sisterhood episodes. It would be a great blessing to us that if you decide to buy a book mentioned in this podcast, you purchase it through the link in our episode show notes.
We want everyone to get to know our listeners, and so we'll be doing listener spotlight episodes from time to time. If you would like to share your testimony or what the Lord is doing in your life currently, or if you are leading in ministry or another field and would like to tell us about that for Jesus Sister Excelling in the Last Third episode, please contact us at support@JesusPeopleSisterhood.com. We would love to have our listeners come and share with the sisterhood. And now, let's get to today's episode.
Today we're tackling something that's become a national obsession. Ozempic and similar injections like Wegovy and Mounjaro. These are the new GLP-1 agonist drugs that promise fast, easy weight loss. We'll look at what they actually do in your body, the dangers experts like Dr. Mark Hyman and others are warning about, and what's driving this movement. Big food, big pharma, and the culture of quick fixes. And of course, we'll ask, what does God say about how we treat our bodies, our appetites, and our health? And keep listening because we will share what you can do naturally to raise GLP-1 to become more insulin sensitive and lose weight. So, Ellie, why did you want to do an episode on GLP-1 drugs?
It probably started about a year ago. A friend of mine, I had attended church with her, told me that the church that we had both visited together, and which she continued to attend, but I moved away, that the wife of the pastor at that church had taken one of these GLP-1 drugs. I don't know if it was Ozempic or what. And after taking it, she developed gastroparesis, which I didn't know what that was then, but basically that her stomach was paralyzed. And she was in a wheelchair. She couldn't eat anything. She couldn't digest anything because her digestive system was paralyzed. And my friend was asking for prayer for her, but also she told me that this pastor's wife asked her to warn people not to take GLP-1 drugs
Mm,
because I'm assuming that they weren't sure she was going to recover and she might die because she couldn't eat.
mm,
So that was pretty scary. So that
mhm.
was the first thing is hearing about this pastor's wife who I knew
Right.
and her requesting to warn people about the dangers of the drugs. And
Mhm,
then after that, I started seeing all these advertisements everywhere, constantly, it seemed like on social media.
mhm,
Take this Mounjaro trick and this such and such. It was like everywhere.
mhm,
And then I saw Serena Williams, this athlete, world-class athlete, probably the best female tennis player in,
mhm,
ever, taking this GLP-1 drugs and promoting it.
mhm.
And so you're going to think it's healthy, right?
Right.
And then I think the final kicker was that I listened to a podcast called Diary of a CEO, which we've talked about before, that featured Ben Bickman, who's a PhD in bioenergetics, where he shared the harmful effects of GLP-1 drugs. So, with all of that information and realizing that many sisters would be encouraged to take GLP-1 drugs, which can be extremely harmful, I thought it was pertinent to do this episode.
Okay. And for those listeners out there who may not know what a GLP-1 drugs is, could you help me with that? What are they, Ellie, and how do they work?
Okay, so GLP-1 stands for glucagon-like peptide 1, which is a hormone that helps regulate blood sugar and hunger, and we have it naturally in our bodies. Our bodies produce it. So Ozempic mimics that hormone and other drugs like it, making the brain think that you're fuller for longer.
Mm,
It slows digestion, so the food stays in your stomach longer and your appetite decreases. It causes the pancreas to release more insulin, which makes your blood sugar levels drop.
mm.
And people lose weight largely because they eat much less. They're just not hungry.
Okay. So the challenge is that your body starts to depend on this artificial signal that you're getting from the drug, and natural hunger cues can weaken. So when you stop taking the drug, your appetite can come back harder than ever before, and the pounds often return with more fat and less muscle. And that's a dangerous combo for women over 50. Muscle is what keeps our metabolism humming, our bones strong, our balance steady. So when you lose your muscle, you lose your engine. It's like turning off the hunger signal without fixing what's caused the hunger in the first place.
The main impetus for doing this episode was after I listened to Benjamin Bickman's interview on the Diary of a CEO podcast with host Stephen Bartlett. The entire podcast, actually, entire episode was over 2 hours long. And Ben Bickman only spoke about GLP-1 drugs for maybe 10 minutes. But when Ben shared in those 10 minutes, what he shared was really impactful. So we're going to share some of what he shared in the episode because the person who is most adversely and irreversibly affected by using GLP-1 drugs are you sisters, women over 50.
Okay. So let's get back to Benjamin Bickman. He is a professor of cell biology at BYU. His dissertation work was done at one of the first funded labs to look at GLP-1 drugs for diabetes. GLP-1 is a hormone that we all make from our guts. Our small intestine will make GLP-1, and we're making it all the time to a varying degree. Something we eat will either result in a higher GLP-1, or sometimes the things that we eat will result in a lower GLP-1 level.
Bickman gave an example of this from a recent paper. A study was done with two groups of people eating a meal with the same amount of calories. But one group ate a lower amount of carbs and the other group ate a higher amount.
Hmm.
And what's interesting is the low carb meal will produce GLP-1 three times higher than the high carb version of the meal. So remember, they're both the same amount of calories, but
Mhm.
a lower carb meal produces a lot more GLP-1.
Mhm.
One of GLP-1's main effects is to tell the brain that we're full. So more GLP-1 means less hunger. And this particular example shows how eating a high carb meal doesn't signal to the brain and body that you are full.
Wow. Okay. Another study was done where they took obese and lean humans and had them eat fat, pure fat. And they found that the GLP-1 response was the same whether you were lean or obese. However, when they had these same groups eat carbs, the lean group had a robust GLP-1 and they were full. But the obese group ate the same amount of carbs but had an almost negligible GLP-1 effect. The obese group was still hungry.
I think maybe we should say here what carbs are. So think of your breads, your grains, fruits and vegetables, and some are more carby than others, like potatoes. All those things are what carbs are.
Mhm.
So Ben Bickman stated that he was concerned when he saw how social media is touting these drugs and felt that someone had to be the voice that says, "What about this?" And he went on to share some of his concerns with the drug. So, what he shared about a study in the New England Journal of Medicine really concerned me because I know how damaging this can be to women over 50. So, according to this study, for every 6 pounds of fat mass lost on the drug, a person was losing 4 pounds of lean mass.
Wow.
So 40% of the weight people are losing on these drugs is from lean mass like muscle and bone.
Hmm.
He also said that 69% of people in the UK get off the drug after 2 years. So Ben went on to give the example of a 60-year-old woman who's been on the drug. And Bickman said that he specifically uses the example a woman, that gender, and that age, which is the gender and age of our listeners.
Right.
Because for that group of people, it is so hard to grow new muscle and bone. So let's say that she's been on a drug for a year and she's lost 45 pounds.
Right.
40% came from her lean mass and 60% came from her fat.
Wow. Bickman goes on to say that when she gets off the drug, now all of her lean mass, the muscle and bone, is never coming back. It's probably lost and gone forever at that age. After the age of 60, it's difficult to build new muscle and bone. But what can come back rapidly is that fat mass. So at 2 years, she decides to get off the drug, which 70% of people do. They're going to gain that fat back, but they're not going to get their muscle and bone back. That is a significant loss that may be, depending on their age, gone forever.
Then the host, Steve Bartlett and Ben Bickman, discussed the young singer Avery, who posted about her osteoporosis diagnosis after being on Ozempic for only a year. And I did see a later YouTube video where Avery was a guest on somebody's YouTube, and she
Mhm.
shares more on that, which I will try and put all of these video links in the show notes.
Mhm.
So Avery was sharing that she was just visited the doctor after being on Ozempic or
Mhm.
one of these drugs for a year, and she was devastated to find out that she now has osteoporosis.
Yeah.
Ben Bickman then went on to discuss malnutrition if you're already lean, as well as the mental health issues. And he was very concerned about somebody like Avery, who was relatively young, didn't really need to lose weight. And the story is that she is a musical artist and her label told her to, that she had to lose
Mhm.
weight or something like that. So it's really sad. There was a paper that found that the risk of suicidal thoughts doubles on GLP-1 drugs and the risk of major depression triples. So when you think about it, you think, okay, I'm going to take this drug and I'm going to lose weight and I'm going to start to feel really good about myself, right?
Mhm.
And I'm going to start enjoying life because I'm thinner and I feel better. Well, that's not the case. That isn't
Hmm.
what happens. So the risk of suicidal thoughts doubles and major depression triples. That's incredible.
Mm.
The thought is that perhaps as your desire for food goes away, so does your desire for everything else. You lose interest in exercise and hobbies and spending time with friends and family. Despite all that I've shared, Ben Bickman said he does not completely condemn the use of GLP-1 drugs. He believes you can use these drugs to help someone learn to control their carbohydrate addiction. If you take GLP-1 drugs, your sweet cravings go down significantly. But at the end of this section, Dr. Bickman said that there is a value in denying yourself something you shouldn't be doing. There are life lessons there.
Right. So we also watched another video on GLP-1 from Dr. Mark Hyman, a well-known medical doctor specializing in functional medicine. And Dr. Hyman relayed that these drugs have become a craze and that there's a lot of money flowing into research. Unfortunately, he purports, most of it is funded by the industry and by pharma, so it's biased. We've seen an increase in side effects for those who have been on the drug long term. There are also common side effects for the short term. 50% of people who take it have nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea. But there are more serious side effects that Dr. Hyman is concerned about, including gastroparesis, bowel obstruction, pancreatitis, and even death. And this makes him question the long term use of these drugs and the widespread use of these drugs. How did obesity triple from 13% to 43% of the population? And only 6.8 of Americans are metabolically healthy. Teenage obesity is at 22%. Over 40% of the teens are overweight. This is not a problem of Ozempic deficiency, but our toxic food environment. According to Dr. Hyman, the solution isn't taking a very expensive drug with side effects to compound these problems. It's a gold mine for pharma to have so many people taking this expensive drug for the rest of their lives.
Yeah. And just like you said, this increase in being overweight or being obese isn't
Hmm.
because we were all deprived of Ozempic.
Right,
We don't have a
exactly.
deficiency for that drug. Okay. So according to Dr. Hyman, ultra-processed food makes up 60% of our diet and 67% of kids' diets.
Wow.
They account for 90% of the sugar in our diet. 150 pounds of sugar per person per year. That's
Wow.
22 teaspoons per adult and 34 teaspoons per child per day.
Unbelievable.
This is causing metabolic dysfunction and accounts for obesity, diabetes, dementia, and Alzheimer's, fatty liver disease, kidney disease, and premature death. GLP-1 drugs are very expensive in the US, and whether the patient pays or the insurance company does, Novo Nordisk and other manufacturers of these drugs are raking in billions of dollars. Chronic disease is bankrupting our nation. $4.3 trillion is being spent on chronic disease. In 2000, it was only 1.2 trillion. So we're getting sicker.
Hmm.
So we're in a crisis of accelerating disease and accelerating costs, and it's not solved by a drug with serious side effects and may cause the bankruptcy of our nation.
Mm. And there are more risks. Many of those drugs don't have long enough studies. They haven't been studied over time for a long period of time. So the results may not be conclusive. For example, statin drugs only reduce heart attacks by 20 to 30%. 20 to 30% is considered significant in medicine. Just imagine, Ellie, 20 to 30%. That's not a great
Yeah,
score.
less than half of the people. And yet
Exactly.
everybody's taking just puts you on statin when
Right.
it only reduces heart attacks by 20 to 30%. That's bad.
Hmm. In a study in JAMA of over 4,000 patients, 5 out of every 1,000 had stomach paralysis, which is an increased risk of 367%. The risk of pancreatitis, which is an incredibly dangerous illness, went up by 900%. And bowel obstruction, which is very serious as well and often requires surgery, went up by 422%. This is not insignificant. 40% of the weight you lose with these drugs is muscle, and muscle is where your metabolism is. And when you lose muscle, you lose your metabolism. It slows down, and you end up needing less food to maintain your weight. 65% of the weight that you lose is regained when people stop the medications. So how do we get off the drug? What happens with the kids? Well, we don't have any answers. We don't know.
Yeah, something else to point out is that they are prescribing this drug to children, and doctors are able to prescribe this to children as young as 6. And it's a medication that you are supposed to stay on your whole life.
Mm-hmm.
What is that doing with no long-term studies? What is that doing to people?
Mm-hmm.
So Dr. Hyman stated that we have addictive, ultra-processed foods that are driving the obesity epidemic, not our genes, not an Ozempic deficiency.
Mm-hmm.
And a worldwide study showed 40% of adults meet the scientific definition for food addiction. To put that in perspective, alcohol addiction is only 14%.
Wow.
So we need to focus on nutrition quality, not lower calorie intake. With these drugs, you will become malnourished because you're just eating less. And if you lose lean muscle, it's serious. And that's where your metabolism is. Again, that's the energy factory. That's where your glucose sink is. So if you stop taking the drug, you gain the weight back. But it's more fat, not muscle. And you've lowered your metabolism and have to eat less not to gain weight. I think there's a lot of people out there who've gone on diets and lost a lot of weight. And if they didn't do exercise, if they weren't doing anything else, all they did was diet, and then they stopped,
Yeah.
they gained more weight back, and it was more fat. I'm sure there's people out there who, yeah, that happened to them. In a step 1 trial study, 2/3 of people regained the weight they lost 2 years after they discontinued the drug. And also, any benefits like cardiovascular biomarkers also went back to where they were. 1 out of 10 has a severe side effect. So the majority of people, we know, 70%, quit the drug. And 2/3 of those people, the majority, gain the weight back, and they don't even keep whatever other gains they might have had for other health issues. And they may have suffered a severe side effect, right? 1 out of
Right.
10.
Mm-hmm.
Then you know what? Why are people taking the drug? It's just crazy.
According to Hyman, the drugs do work in that patients lose 10 to 20% of their body weight, and they see improvements in cholesterol and A1C, triglycerides, and liver function. And all those are good things. But they're probably due to the weight loss, not the drug use. Diet and lifestyle change work far better than those drugs. So the solution is to remove ultra-processed food from our diet. There is really no room for them at all. You can eat whole foods. We also need to exercise, to do resistant training to build muscle, learn how to manage stress, and get that adequate sleep we so really need. What happens when you do this? Well, he just had a patient who lost 60 pounds, and he hadn't put him on Ozempic.
For the sake of time, we're pausing the conversation here. We'll pick it back up next week and conclude our discussion in part 2 of what you should know about Ozempic and other GLP-1 drugs. Thanks for listening to today's episode. Please share any thoughts that resonated with you from today's podcast episode in our private Facebook group at Jesus People Sisterhood Community. Start reaching out to other single women and create your local group of Jesus People Sisters. Please let us know about your group to add to our directory by contacting us at support@JesusPeopleSisterhood.com.
Have you had a good experience with a business? They've treated you honestly and helped you at a reasonable price? Please let us know. We would like to start a directory of JPS-friendly businesses. Let's care for one another.
Be blessed by him who is able to protect you from stumbling and to make you stand in the presence of his glory, blameless and with great joy. Until next time. Hey sister, before you go, thank you for listening. If you found value in today's podcast, the best way to say thank you is by leaving a 5-star written review at Apple Podcasts. That raises us in the rankings and helps other sisters find us too. And please tell a friend or post it on your social media. If you're a single Christian woman over 50, this podcast was created specifically for you. The Jesus People Sisterhood is your community to find support and friendship with other sisters who can understand. Be sure to follow us on your podcast app and join our free private Facebook group at Jesus People Sisterhood Community.
Jesus People Sisterhood has also started a private Facebook group for housing and co-living opportunities. You can check that out at Jesus People Sisterhood Senior Housing. You can also find us on Facebook at Jesus People Sisterhood and individually for Janine at riseupcoachingandconsulting.com and for Ellie at samaramountain.com. And ladies, this is the necessary disclaimer. Our podcast content is for informational purposes and does not constitute professional advice from mental health, medical, legal, financial, or other areas. The opinions of the guest do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the host. It is our heart that this podcast will be a blessing to you. Together, let's build a powerful sisterhood with Jesus. Make a friend, add a sister, across the border and around the world.